Today we're spectating an Eternity Thor player after the season 2.5 nerfs to see what he does better and how we can improve together. So we're playing on the new map actually, which is pretty cool. Obviously we're spectating Thor here, and this video, I'll be pretty honest with you, I'm probably going to talk maybe a bit less about the gameplay itself and a bit more about the hero of Thor. And this is exactly what I mean, right? He's already in his awakening state almost immediately, man, right? And that is trying to pull off a flank, singles out the Hulk here. They're in a 1v1 situation and he's popped his awakening state, and Thor pretty much wins this 9 times out of 10, to be honest, because Thor just outputs really good damage in his awakening state. Now the awakening state's good, but it shouldn't be his whole entire kit in my opinion, and this is what all the main Thor players, so there's people that play Thor and kind of switch to him from time to time, and I kind of put myself in that category of Thor players. I know a little bit more about Thor than I do some other tanks because I actually use Thor quite a bit. And as you can see here, he's taking out the Namor squids, which to be fair, I would have still focused on Namor himself, but his squids do tons of damage, so you still need to kind of look into that. Good. Luckily his teammates were backing him up there as well. But as I was saying with Thor, the main part of his kit was obviously not his hammer throw, but it was a very important part of his kit to make him dynamic. Right now he's pulling off a flank and he's using his awakening state to do the flank with. He's not very mobile. He's just pouring damage down range and he dies, right? If this was old Thor before these changes, he probably would have survived that. And the reason why is because you're still mobile with the hammer throw. The hammer throw allowed you to be a lot more dynamic with Thor and play him so differently and in many different ways, right? You can use the awakening rune if you want to. You could have just brawled out there as well, using the hammer throw, dealing that 100 burst damage in your animation cancel, and just brawling away, pushing, displacing enemies out of position. And that hammer throw allowed you to do all of that because it gave you that burst of damage and it allowed you to be a bit more dynamic. Really good ultimate placement right there. So he's done really good ultimate, and then obviously pops his awakening again just to deal tons of damage because that is what it's good at. And as you can see, man, he's probably not going to be using the hammer throw all that often. And people who didn't really use it before don't really understand the value of it. But now it's almost like not a great ability. I know it keeps you in awakening state a lot, but you could have done that already with the kind of the bubble that he has, right? I don't know what it's actually called, but the bubble ability already did that anyway. As you can see here, popping awakening again, just trying to stay in this ability for as long as he can. It's almost played a bit like Mr. Fantastic, where if you're not in awakening state constantly, you're really not playing this character optimally, and playing him optimally is quite boring now, to be honest, because before you could use the awakening state, you could stay alive through that. If he was able to cancel the animation of awakening rune, and this is the kind of other thing I want to talk about, if they want to keep him the same with the same abilities and stuff, they need to be able to animation cancel his abilities, man. We don't want to be stuck in awakening state or in his ultimate animation for like such a long period of time. We want to be able to cancel that and play a bit more dynamic with Thor. And I think that's the kind of issue, man, right? Because there's not really other tanks that played like Thor before, where you can displace enemies and kind of knock them out of position and then also brawl with them at the same time. And they've took that away completely from what his identity was before. We are now, like, as you can see through this gameplay, man, I don't even need to talk you through it too much. If you've played Thor before, basically he's popping awakening rune just like constantly now, kind of flanking here. And again, this is a point where he should be brawling, right? You don't want to be throwing projectiles at Magneto when he's got a shield, but you can't brawl with Magneto because they took away his brawling aspect, right? They took away the main thing that helped him brawl, which is that hammer throw that dealt 100 damage there and back. So it was like 70 damage on the way out, 30 damage on the way back, I believe. But that with his animation cancel allowed him to do so much damage, man. And then obviously the dashes as well, which kind of knocked enemies out of place, kind of disoriented them as well. Now you're just kind of stuck in a stationary position, just chucking out damage. It's not really the way to play, right? So right now he's struggling to brawl. And then he's just waiting for Awakening Rune again, right? And it's cool on heroes that can't really defend themselves, like Adam Warlock right here, who can't move. But when it comes to, like I said, Magneto's, Doctor Strange's, some of the other tanks in the game, even Penny Parker to some extent, and any heroes with some kind of relatively decent CC control, you're struggling, right? So that is the issue with Thor right now, in my opinion. So realistically, I like the way Thor played before. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he played... It was only certain people that understood the way he needed to be played, and this is why I think they made the change in the first place. Because it wasn't quite obvious where he sat in the meta. But now it's super obvious where he sits in the meta, right? He's just the kind of frontliner, poking damage, and just dealing tons of damage through Awakening Rune. So now talking about this guy, obviously he is playing to Thor's main ability, essentially. It is a very boring playstyle, as I've just mentioned. He's doing the same thing almost repeatedly all the time. Waiting for his Awakening Rune, dashing out, and then saving himself. Knocked the Magneto out of position here. He's going to brawl with him, but then he pops Awakening Rune once again, which you should not have done. That's what I'm saying. Like, once you've popped Awakening and you realize it was the wrong thing to do, because against Magneto's the not the right thing. What he's doing now, which is when he does his hammer throw, is the correct brawling method for Magneto, because he's got shield, right? As soon as you start throwing your hammers out with Awakening, he's going to be able to block that. There's just something to keep in mind. And this is why the hammer throw is no longer that powerful anymore. So against Penny, not too bad, obviously, because you just want to chuck out as much damage as you can. She doesn't really have shields. Obviously, if she's in her Penny kind of nest area, then that's something to keep in mind, because she is getting over shields throughout that. But like I said, he does output tons of damage in Awakening state, so obviously being in that state for a long period of time, it's still going to give you value, right? It's like I said, it's kind of very similar to Mr. Fantastic and his kind of big bubble form. Again, popping Awakening again, just poking damage. Like I said, man, there's not really much to be said about what he's doing. This guy is a very high level Thor player, but what he's doing is not impressive at all, right? And Thor was a relatively decent skilled hero before. I wouldn't say he's super hard to use before this, but now he's just really easy. So if you want to do well with someone, then you can go Thor, I guess. Now that we're halfway through the video, if you are enjoying it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as we do like to spectate high level players, low level players, and any buffs and nerfs to heroes as we progress throughout all the seasons. And Thor has kind of got more of a boring playstyle now, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, and that is highlighted throughout this gameplay. I do want to show you it regardless, because I feel like we kind of need to get a bit more fun back in this hero, and that is what I'm kind of discussing throughout this video, along with watching how this player uses him now after the new nerfs. Let's get straight back into it. So here we are on the defending side now. Dashes the Hulk out of position, tries to brawl with him. Probably should have popped Awakening, let's be honest. But regardless, Hulk's one of the tanks where you do want to use Awakening on. Obviously, he does have his own shields, but for the most part, you can kind of sit and brawl with him, right? And this is the part where you kind of get stuck, because at that point, he realized he needed to leave the fight, but he couldn't dash away, right? So if they give him some kind of way to cancel his Awakening Rune state, I think that will make him a little bit better, just in terms of giving him a bit more mobility that way. It's not going to make him broken or OP, it's just going to make it so that he can escape when he needs to, and it doesn't keep you stuck in an animation for no reason whatsoever. A lot of other heroes have animation cancels in this game, and I think Thor could benefit from one with Awakening and one for his ultimate as well, where I feel like he kind of sits in the air a little too long, where you can just get cancelled, essentially, and it makes his ultimate even less powerful than it already is, to be honest. Here we are holding an off angle. He's going to try and get a bit of a flank going on the enemy team. I wonder if he pops his Awakening in the flank, or if he's trying to... Right, so basically there's not really much else to be said about the way this guy's playing. I just wanted to make this video because I wanted to discuss kind of the state of Thor, which I feel like I've already done as well. But also the fact that he's actually a very easy hero to use now as well, as we can see. There's not really much to it, really, besides trying to stay in Awakening as much as you possibly can. Poke damage. And if you start dying, you just want to back up, really. In terms of displacing enemies, he has done it a couple of times, but he doesn't really do it as often as someone would have done before this update, because the survivability is nowhere near as good as well. So even in knocking an enemy at position, sometimes depending on which hero you pick to kind of 1v1 and kind of try and do that battle. Portal close? I don't know the portals can close on this map. I don't think he did either. Again, Awakening state just to chuck out the hammers. Kind of holding this off angle right here. He's got his ultimate, so he will be ready to pop that at some point. Obviously, he is trying to sandwich the enemy team here because his team is just kind of turning up now. Got the portal again. 1v1 in the rocket. Gets the rocket out. That's an easy fight, of course, for Thor. Dashing up here to try and take the fight on. Pops his ultimate. Doesn't get any finishes, but will get the Groot. Focusing on the Adam Warlock here again. Gets him out. Animation cancels. Kind of like the last attack of that Awakening state with his primary attack. Trying to take on the supports here as well. The guy's aim is pretty decent when he's chucking out the hammers with the Awakening state. I do want to keep that in mind when it comes to this guy. He's doing a good job kind of cycling the ability. I mean, you pretty much get it all the time now anyway, so you might as well just use it as much as you can. Managed to get out. I don't even know who he killed there. Is that the Groot? Killed the Groot. Chucking out more damage again, down range, just sitting with his team now. And he's getting that damage boost as well from the rocket ultimate. So definitely loads of damage coming from Thor here. Gets the diver in the team. 1v1ing the Punisher and takes him out in the Awakening state. Ridiculous. Obviously, he was getting some help from his teammates there as well, but that's absolutely insane. Don't know what the Cloak and Dagger's doing here. This lobby's a bit strange, if I'm being honest with you. So that's our player Pieman, who goes 37 and 4, 23k damage and 22 final hits. That's quite a lot of damage for a tank. Obviously, they kind of dominated the enemy team here, but let's be honest, the way he was playing is a very boring playstyle, and it's not because he played bad. He's playing the hero the way it should be played now, which is a bit annoying because I feel like Thor was a lot more fun to play before, and he had a little bit more to his playstyle before this update. Now, like I said, he's an Awakening Rune merchant, and as long as you keep spamming Awakening Rune as often as you can, you're going to do well with Thor, right? So I actually think he's one of the easiest tanks to play now. So if you need a tank to go along with your other tank, as long as your other tank's relatively skilled in tanking in general, then anyone can almost pick up Thor now and do well, as long as you dash out, come back, do your Awakening Rune, dash out, come back, do your Awakening Rune again, and that is basically his playstyle in a nutshell. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are on Thor down in the comments below, and thank you very much for watching.